Hello there and a warm welcome to Africa Tonight. This is our Friday edition. Is hoping you have had a lovely week as we head on to the weekend. My name is Audrey Chimwanda and these are our top stories. Election campaigning is in full swing in Gambia. President Yahya Jammeh is seeking re-election for a fifth term on the 1st of December. Burundi's government refuses to cooperate with the United Nations inquiry into months of political violence. And frustrated by the conflict in South Sudan, a group of young artists use art to spread a message of peace and unity. And our top story tonight, Gambians prepare for elections. President Yahya Jammeh has urged his supporters to abstain from violence on Wednesday. And the rights groups have raised concerns over the arrest of journalists on the outset of the presidential election campaign. Gabon will head to the polls on the 1st of December.
Election campaigning is in full swing in Gambia, a week before the country heads to the polls. Gambian President Yahya Jammeh held his election campaign in the village of Bikama, south of the capital Banjul. He is seeking a fifth term in office. Jammeh has urged his supporters to abstain from violence.
I am the president for all Gambians. Let me make it very clear. I will not allow one person to jeopardize the peace, tranquility and development of this country. I will never accept that. Gambians, go and vote between you, the Almighty Allah, and your conscience. It's not my business.
The 51-year-old leader took power in a bloodless coup in 1994 and has since run the tiny West African country with an iron fist. His regime is regularly accused by rights groups of arranging the forcible disappearances and arbitrary arrests of his opponents. He is widely expected to win this election.
All these days I was sick. I didn't even go to work since yesterday. But because of my president is coming to become, I am very proud of that. I'm happy about that. That's why I came to see him.
Because the type of development that he have done in this country, we cannot even mention it. If I want to mention that, we will stay here up to daybreak.
Opposition parties have decided to join forces to field a single candidate, Adana Barrow, to take on Jammeh. The only other candidate is a former ruling party MP, Mama Kadei, who has been accused of being used to split opposition votes. Bureau Report, ANN7.
We go to Burundi now, where the government has refused to cooperate with the United Nations inquiry into months of political violence. The government says the accusations of abuses by its officials were part of a political plot. The United Nations announced the inquiry this week to identify perpetrators in the Central African state, which has been driven now by clashes and killings. Chaos erupted in Burundi in the year 2015 when President Pierre Nkurunziza announced his plans to run for a re-election. Now joining me on the phone line is Burundian youth activist Raphael Mbonimpa. Raphael, very good evening to you. Welcome to Africa Tonight. Burundi's government, what reasons have they cited for refusing to cooperate with the United Nations inquiry? We've seen months of violence and political turmoil in Burundi in the past couple of months.
Thank you for having me on your show tonight. What we are witnessing is escalation of state violence against dissidents in Burundi, and the current refusal by our government to cooperate with the UN Commission of Inquiry is not coming as a surprise to anyone, because as you can remember, the government have refused to cooperate with the international community at several occasions. One can recall here the Maprobu force that was suggested by the African Union to go and protect civilians, which was directly opposed by the government of Pierre Nkurunziza, which threatened to shoot down those forces were they to enter their sovereign land. Also, the United Nations proposed a force of 275 police to go in Burundi and protect civilians, which were also denied. Recently, we saw that the government decided to withdraw from ICC, the International Criminal Court, which again was a sign of defiance from the Burundian government against the international community. And right now, the recent refusal to cooperate again with the United Nations Commission of Inquiry is another sign that this government is not interested in any peaceful resolution to the current conflict. The government is not interested in ending this conflict, and that's why we as Burundians are calling for more vigorous action from the international community, because this government have not shown any signs of cooperation, and we don't expect them to change that stance.
Raphael, Burundi has become increasingly isolated from the international community, as you mentioned in your response a few minutes ago, notably withdrawing from the ICC. Is there a risk of genocide in Burundi?
There is a serious risk of genocide, like the United Nations Commission had showed in September, and the signs are there. The signs are there because our neighboring Rwanda had similar events in '94, which culminated in the genocide that is known to the whole world. And the signs and events that happened prior to that genocide of Rwanda in '94 are the same signs that are there in Burundi today. For instance, one can mention the youth militia that were in Rwanda, that were called Interahamwe, that carried out that genocide. We have an equivalent of that youth militia in Burundi today, the infamous Imbonerakure, that Pierre Nkurunziza keep on inciting. These young people that he has hijacked, that he continued to train. Today, these militia are conducting paramilitary exercise in the broad daylight. They are conducting military parades during the day. They are the ones patrolling through the capital city and the provinces, and they are very visible signs that a genocide is very imminent in Burundi. There have been censuses of the population being carried on by the government, where they are putting people in categories, separating the Hutus and the Tutsis. All these are things that have happened before in Rwanda, before the genocide happened. Also, one has to note that right now Burundi has totally no contact with the outside world. The media inside the country have been totally shuttered, and right now the fact that our government has decided to refuse to cooperate with any outside mission that comes in Burundi shows that this government is determined to isolate itself, but also close completely the border to the outside world so that they can carry out their mission of killing its own people without anyone interfering. But it's important also to note that today, although there are visible signs of genocide, it's not only the Tutsis who are being killed. There are other dissident groups, like the main opposition party in Burundi, the FNL, for instance. Its members have been tracked and killed by the government for a long time because they are also the main threat. They are the opposition, which shows that the current government is not even interested in negotiating with anyone. They simply don't want to leave power, and they attempt currently to completely change the constitution so that Pierre Nkurunziza can remain a president of Burundi forever. So these are very dangerous signs. There's genocide that is going to happen, and unfortunately it's going to kill not just Tutsis, but also other group of population that do not accept the current dictatorial tendencies of the current president.
Raphael, yourself being a youth activist, are you affiliated with any political party? And even if you're not, what do you think needs to happen in Burundi? Being a sovereign country, the answers for this country need to come from within. As you have mentioned that the country seems to be isolating itself from the international community. What needs to happen going forward?
Look, right now we are facing a very dangerous and very difficult situation, but of course one has always to give priority to dialogue, and that's what the international community have tried to do. Unfortunately, all their calls have failed to a dead ear from the government. They do not want the dialogue. There have been two attempts to resuscitate the dialogue between Burundians and Tanzania, but right now that dialogue is completely dead. It's no longer happening. But I think there need to be more pressure from the international community to the current government, excuse me, so that they can force it to come to the negotiation table, because that's the only best way to solve the current crisis. If that is impossible, I am afraid things are going to turn bad. And I'm afraid right now Burundians are feeling like they've been abandoned by the international community. And I'm afraid they are going to have to defend themselves. They are going to have to take arms so that they don't die like wild beasts. They know what has happened in neighboring Rwanda, and they see that it's coming to them, because right now it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that sign is going to happen. Because the youth militia that I mentioned, the police force and the security forces have all said that they are ready to carry out the genocide. They are just waiting for a signal. And that signal can be anything. It could be something that happens to President Pierre Nkurunziza by mistake. It could be anything, and blood is going to be spilled. So I think one can privilege dialogue, but in case dialogue is not possible, like the current government has shown that they are not interested in dialogue, then there needs to be further steps. There needs to be a protection force that needs to be deployed in Burundi to protect the civilians before we start regretting what we could have been able to avoid.
Now, we saw President Pierre Nkurunziza was actually the first head of state to congratulate U.S. President-elect Donald Trump on his victory, though we know that Burundi is not a geopolitical priority for the United States. Do you think perhaps Donald Trump will take a stand and with regards to international dialogue and intervention and paving way for that dialogue and understanding?
Well, one can only hope so, but I think right now it's very difficult also to predict what is going to be the American foreign policy under Donald Trump. So again, like you mentioned correctly, Burundi is not really a big political force for Americans, but we are hoping that with the engagement and with the lobbying of Burundians who are in diaspora and others who can do something, we are hoping that the administration of Donald Trump is going to give the conflict in Burundi a priority, because it's not just a conflict that regards Burundi. It's a conflict that could easily spill over to the whole region, the Great Lake region. We know that the DRC right now is not stable, and even Pierre Nkurunziza has been trying to provoke Rwanda so that he can bring Rwanda into this conflict. So it's a conflict that threatens the whole region, a great region. So we are hoping that the administration of Donald Trump will give it a certain attention.
Absolutely, Raphael. We thank you for your time here on ANN 7's Africa Tonight. We certainly appreciate your analysis and giving us an update with regards to what's happening in Burundi. Raphael Mbonimpa there, youth activist from Burundi.